Hi, everyone, and welcome to the session Locating the Caller, Your Map is a Lifeline. I'll be your presenter today, and my name is Diana Gijselaers. I'm an emergency call handling and GIS product manager for Motorola Solutions. The goal of our session today is to introduce you to three key concepts to help you better use your map to find an emergency caller. And those concepts are location accuracy, the map itself, and training. And we'll talk a little bit about the future of mapping. Before we start talking about how to use your map to locate a caller, let's admit it, determining the address to send in a response to can be one of the most difficult and challenging parts of a 911 call. When people call 911, most times they are in a crisis. And when we are stressed and in a crisis, we don't always think and communicate as best we can. Add to that people calling from cell phones, from places where they are unfamiliar with, and from places where they don't know the address. It makes getting an address or a location from an emergency caller really hard. But that's what telecommunicators do. They do hard things all the time in difficult and stressful situations. Today, we will talk about how to use your map to help with these challenges. We'll also talk a little bit about starting to use your map as a visual gateway to new sources of data that can help you locate a caller and gain insight into an event. Before we talk about how this all works, let's review why location is so important. Each 911 call begins with the same question. 911, what is the location of your emergency? Ask a telecommunicator what's the most important piece of information they are responsible for getting from a caller, and the answer will be location. Establishing the location of an emergency allows the telecommunicator to send a response and get a responder to the scene. No matter the issue a caller might be having, if we can get the location, we can get a responder there to help. Today in 911, about 80 to 90% of 911 calls that come into a PSAP are from wireless devices, which means that unlike a wireline call, they don't come in with a dispatchable location or an address. Wireless calls come into a PSAP with an XY coordinate. The telecommunicator must query the caller for an address and a dispatchable location. In many situations, the caller is unable to provide this location. There are a variety of reasons that a caller may not be able to provide the address. They simply may not know it, or they may be under so much stress and in the moment that they are unable to remember it or communicate it to the telecommunicator. In these circumstances, a telecommunicator's map becomes the critical resource to help them establish the caller's location. The X and Y of the call is plotted on the map, and based on the visualization and the underlying GIS data, a telecommunicator is able to more effectively query a caller to confirm or establish a location to which a response can be sent. This allows a telecommunicator to save valuable seconds, and those seconds can save lives. We all want to hear when 911 calls go right, but sometimes they don't, and mistakes can be costly, especially when it comes to establishing the location of a call. Last year in the US, in Kansas City, a mistake in establishing the correct location and sending police officers, actually, let me start that one over again. Last year in Kansas City, a mistake in establishing the correct location caused police officers to go to the wrong location, which led to a gun battle that left one officer dead, 2 officers injured, and a man who shot at them was also killed. This incident generated 4 lawsuits that accused the county of failing to properly train dispatchers on locating where 911 calls originated, not warning officers that errors had happened and could occur, and not ensuring the 911 mapping system was accurate and up to date. Another story recently made the news in the US. The Washington Post reported a story on September 17th of 2020 with the headline, "Overlooked in a Flawed 911 Response to Drowning, a Precise Map." An accurate map, a comment from the article states that an accurate map was available on the very first call. Their technology appears to have worked as designed, but the technology is only as good as the 911 center's procedures, policies, training, and staffing levels. So they had a map and they had the location, but they weren't necessarily trained and they didn't have the procedures in place to make use of it. And I can't stress enough how important training and procedures are in addition to having the map and having the location data. When thinking about the map in your PSAP, I can't stress enough how important it is to really think about and work on having the best location accuracy map and training available that you can have. Having a map system that telecommunicators can trust and use and are trained on makes a real impact on the outcome of a call. This map, while not a public safety map, is one of my favorite examples of just how powerful a map can be at conveying information quickly in a way that you can understand. The simple highlighted circle with the statement, "There are more people living inside this circle than outside of it," provides an insight into the world almost instantaneously that you may not have had before. A map is one of the most important tools the telecommunicator has to identify a caller's location. Maps focus understanding and convey information quickly in a way that is easy to understand. Maps convey information visually, which allows telecommunicators to speak or listen and still be able to read a map and understand information. A good map that can show an accurate location of a caller and that you are trained on helps improve call flow. We all know that PSAPs are filled with information overload and multitasking. And over time, information overload and multitasking can lead to decreased productivity and impaired decision making, two things that we don't want to have in a PSAP. And a good map can help with this. Good maps can improve decision making and can increase your ability to understand complex spatial relationships, like identifying an emergency call taker's location. There are three components to a good map for 911 telecommunicators. They are location accuracy, which relates to how accurate the location information that is provided by ALI or additional data providers such as Rapid SOS. The map. What kind of data is available in your map to give context to the location that is provided with the call? And training. Training, policy, and procedures you have for how to use a map and how to query a caller are central to the success of locating a caller in challenging situations. We'll start today by talking about location accuracy. Within 911, we can think of location accuracy as the closeness of the location provided with the call to the real location of the caller during the call. From a 911 perspective, you always would like to have the highest degree of location accuracy possible. You'd like the call to plot on the map right where the caller is calling from. When it comes to location accuracy, knowing and understanding the class of service associated with the 911 call helps you understand the level of accuracy you can expect the point representing the call on the map to have. For wireless calls, a wireless phase 2 call provides more accurate information than the initial tower location. Wireless phase 2 calls should get you in the general vicinity of a caller, while the initial tower location will show you the tower and perhaps the sector of the tower that the caller is calling from. It is important to understand that the point on the map that displays wireless towers represents the tower location and not the caller location. I know within the US, there are several examples of telecommunicators and dispatchers actually sending out a response to a tower, and that happens. So knowing and understanding what exactly is being displayed on your map is critical. Wireline calls have classes of service such as residential, business, and Centrex. Location accuracy matters here too. For a Centrex call, the location associated with the Centrex number that displays on the map may not be the location the call is actually coming from. It is important to understand this so that you can appropriately query the caller and confirm the location. Just because a point appears on the map doesn't necessarily mean that's where the caller is coming from. So understanding those classes of service and what they're telling you so that you can appropriately query the caller is key to a good response. VoIP calls also have their own special considerations with location accuracy. With some VoIP calls, an address could have been associated with a device, yet that device may not be at the location they originally gave as their location where the call could be sent. Somebody could be at a coffee shop. You could have a mobile VoIP device. Class of service is one of the tools that you have in your toolbox to help understand how accurately the location appears on your map and um, could or could not reflect the actual location of a caller. And today I'm talking a little bit of class of service, and class of service is definitely one of those things that we think about in an E911 environment. A lot of people will say class of service goes away in a next generation environment, and the term class of service does. But the idea behind it, where you have these different types of service, does not. And in a next generation 911 world, they will just be mapped and appear in a different way. But the idea or concept of knowing what type of call you're getting so that you can understand the location as it appears on the map and how to query the caller, that does not go away in next generation 911. Um, and also, while one might expect the quality of wireless carrier accuracy location to be similar in all areas across the country, often it is not. At least in the US, it isn't. It's important to work with your wireless carriers and understand the accuracy available in your community. And if possible, if there's problem areas, work to make them better. And finally, the third component we're looking at is the availability of additional data. At this time, enhanced location through additional data is not available in Canada. However, it likely will be in the future. Enhanced location through additional data in the US has consistently provided more accurate locations for wireless callers than information provided from the wireless carriers. Including additional data and being able to plot 911 events based on additional data once it is available is something that should really be considered. To reiterate, location accuracy as is the closeness of the location provided with the call to the real location of the caller during the call. From a 911 perspective, you would always like to have the highest degree of location accuracy. You'd like the call to plot on the map right where the caller is calling from. As we look at the three examples um, that we see before us on the slide, do you have a preference for which one you would prefer? In this example, the phase one or the tower location gives you a general idea of where the caller may be located. The phase two example narrows down the area, and in the example shown depicts an area about 1 kilometer wide along a stretch of highway. And in the final example, we see that additional data can narrow that down even further, and it shows a location closer to 1/10 of a kilometer marker location. Again, once additional data becomes available, work with your map application provider to ensure that you can display it in your map. It makes a world of difference in being able to know and understand and identify where your caller is. So, now that you have a location to plot, you need a map to plot it on. And that map needs three things: the right layers, accuracy and currentness of data, and readability. If you have all the right data layers and they are accurate and current, but you have a map that is not well designed, not readable, and not easy to see the information you need, it will likely to be hard to use. And if it's hard to use, it probably won't be used. Um, and conversely, you might have a beautiful map that is well designed and easy to read, but the data in it isn't very good. You don't have the right data, and the accuracy and currentness of the data is bad, so you don't trust it. So you're probably not going to use that map either. It's really important that you have all three things together. So maybe not in all cases, but in some of them. If you don't have a map that is meeting your needs, try to find out who your GIS provider is and if they can work to make it better. Sometimes there's not always the best communication between GIS and public safety. But sometimes when you start to bridge the communication gaps, things can improve. It's worth asking for. Telecommunicators deserve nice maps, and good maps can improve the outcomes of calls when it is difficult to identify the location of a caller. So I mentioned a little bit earlier about having the right layers, and I think about the layers kind of in three different groupings. You have standard layers, and standard layers consist of things like civic locations, which are your streets and addresses, your boundaries, your county, city, emergency service areas, and points of interest. Additionally, your maps might have some context layers, things like parcels and building footprints, parks, natural areas, hydrology, transit lines such as railroads, and additional aerial imagery. And then I have a third category, which I think of as location lifesavers. And because people call from the darndest places, they call from outside, and oftentimes, when people are having emergencies in outdoor places, there might not be civic style addresses available, and getting information to be able to get a responder to them can be really difficult. So having information on your map, like like mile markers, for roads, rivers, railroads, and trails, can be critical. Being able to associate a caller's location um, with one of those layers or one of those points can get the response to them quicker. Also, things like trails, trailheads, for those areas on the coast, beach access points for those areas along rivers and lakes, boat ramps, and also as location accuracy increases and we have more availability and people call from internal locations, indoor floor plans can also be critical. Depending on your community and your environment, there may be different location lifesavers that are applicable in your community. Again, I really encourage you to talk with your GIS people and see if they have any ideas or additional layers that you might be able to add to your 911 map. So as we look at the two examples on this slide, again, do you have a preference for which one you prefer? It's important to have your standard layers, streets, and address points, as we see with the minimal layers on the left-hand side. But it's easier to understand a location if you have more context that additional layers bring, like points of interest, building footprints, parks, and hydrology. Looking at the map with the additional layers, it's easier to discern that the caller is calling from the Lake Park School at 330 West Lake Park. Again, anything that makes it easier to understand the location more accurately and more quickly is going to help you save those valuable seconds. Um, Again, I talked a little bit about aerial imagery. Oh, yeah, we're on the right slide. And if you have aerial imagery available as well, that can also be very helpful. Now we're going to talk a little bit about training. And this, I guess, I will just say it, is where I'm a little bit disappointed we're doing this virtually, and this is a recorded session. My favorite part of doing this presentation live is asking and engaging the audience to talk about the different training techniques that they include within their PSAPs and within their communication centers. So while we're doing this virtually, if you guys have some training ideas that you guys want to share, that would be awesome. It is so good to be able to learn from our neighbors and our colleagues. And usually I find so many good and different tips just talking to people about it. So as part of this virtual training, I'm just going to talk a little bit about some different training strategies in general. One thing that you might not necessarily think about or consider when you're doing map training is training without your map and really getting your telecommunicators to have a sense of the basic geography of your area um, in their own kind of mental map. Being able to kind of know and understand the area and be able to form that picture in your mind and know the basic geography of the area that you're serving is critical. So while that might not be typical map training, having basic geography training of your community um, is critical. Also, If you have challenging geographies within your community, knowing and identifying them ahead of time and being able to talk to your telecommunicators about what some of those challenges are is also really helpful. If you have natural areas perhaps that people call from where you might have some challenging geographies, developing strategies for how you deal with that ahead of time is important. If you have, I guess, kind of like larger communities with sub-addresses that might be difficult or challenging, identifying those ahead of time is also really helpful. And also, um, just having telecommunicators work with their map for every single call, even if you don't necessarily think that you need it. That process of looking at your map to confirm the caller's location is going to help you. Knowing how to do searches, um, knowing how to get the information from your map, even in simple calls, is going to train you and give you that application memory to be able to use the map when you get one of those really, really difficult, challenging calls where your map might be one of the only sources of information that you are going to have to really know and understand how to query your caller. So I can't stress enough how important it is to know the map that you have in your center and to train on your map. Again, I mentioned this just a moment ago, but for every call, check the map, double check what you think you know. I alluded to and mentioned at the beginning of this session the lawsuits that had happened in Kansas City, and one of those issues was with reporting mapping errors. The center there, according to the article, knew and was aware that there were mapping errors within their map, but they did not fix them and they weren't necessarily all reported. If you see mistakes in your map, report them to your GIS people. Um, Open that chain of communication, um, and I guess if there are problems with that communication, some things that can help with that are inviting GIS people to your call center to see what you do. And also, for GIS people, if you are getting those errors, letting the people back in the PSAPs know that you've seen them and you've corrected them. That two-way communication of reporting them and getting the feedback that they have been corrected is so important. And lastly, to kind of talk about training, and I know we went over this really briefly, is train on what kind of questions you ask a caller in different situations. Um, One of my favorite quotes is the map does not equal the territory, which means just because you see something on the map doesn't really mean that it's there. And you can see that with aerial imagery. Like you might get a new building, a building might be destroyed. Um, People make mistakes on maps, and the critical part of a call with an emergency caller is the telecommunicator and the telecommunicator's critical thinking skills. What you bring to the call is so important, and knowing and understanding how to use your map to ask the right questions of the caller to get their location, and knowing how to really listen to the caller even if they're crazy and stressed, to be able to get that location is important. Asking questions and querying the caller about their location and challenging the caller about their location to get an accurate location is so important. And I hope, don't know this yet, but I hope you guys put some comments in the chat box about some good training strategies that you guys might have and have developed. Um, so before we conclude, oops, before we conclude, I think it's important to look towards what the future holds. We will be seeing more and more cloud-based web map solutions. These solutions help telecommunicators to connect, focus, and see an event in a new way. They can provide a level of situational intelligence to a telecommunicator that has never been available before. They help a telecommunicator quickly assess a situation um, and respond effectively to a situation. Web maps offer the telecommunicator new sources of data to help them initiate a better response for the caller and first responders. Data that's not commonly found on the maps PSAPs use today. Web maps offer access to borderless base maps and trending web map services such as COVID dashboards and the ability to quickly connect and display event-specific maps such as wildfire perimeters and air quality maps. And for me, I live in the Pacific Northwest, and I've been acutely aware and watching and monitoring the wildfire maps and the air quality maps. And the power of web maps is that if you have a web map application within your PSAP, you can overlay your 911 call or events with that and be able to quickly identify and display within your map event-specific web maps that are available. You can also display things like weather and traffic, um, and video feeds and flood control gauges. There are so many things that mapping and GIS have to offer that you can add into your map. And with the future of web mapping, you'll have more of an opportunity to do that. So as I talk about this, and as this is all still relatively new, the frame of reference that I can speak from is what we are doing at Motorola. And within Motorola, we connect our Command Central event pipeline. That's basically what connects all of our different public safety products together, and we connect that to our map, which allows telecommunicators to access location-based event information across our platform of products. In the future, this is going to allow access to location-based insights that can be derived and revealed through harnessing our big data platform. And this connection provides a one map solution that connects to additional sources of information in real time. And we can connect to a lot of other sources and data feeds as well. As we do that, one of the things that we understand and keep in mind is that information overload and an inundation of data and information is a real cause for concern to telecommunicators as they look towards the future. Equipping maps with the ability to help filter the streams of data and quiet the noise is critical components of maps. It lets telecommunicators focus on the information that they need when they need it. Web maps make possible the connection to live feeds such as weather, traffic sensors, and video. Maps need to filter these feeds so that telecommunicators can see relevant information about the location of a caller in real time. In some instances, you can truly see an emergency caller to confirm their location via available video feeds. Together, these three aspects, connect, focus, see, can bring a level of situational intelligence to a PSAP to help them locate an emergency caller quickly and with more confidence than they've had before. It's all about gathering data in order to make faster, more accurate decisions. Situational intelligence involves more than location data. It encompasses data from multiple sources. It helps visually depict the situation as it unfolds. This idea of situational intelligence enhances the ability to quickly and accurately assess and respond to a situation. To close out and to circle back, in the future, people will continue to call from cell phones, from places they are unfamiliar with, and from places where they don't know the address, or that there really isn't an address. Telecommunicators will continue to work hard to determine the location of an emergency caller, because that's what telecommunicators do. They do hard things all the time and in difficult and stressful situations. And in the future, these key elements of location accuracy, the map, and especially training will continue to be the foundation of how you use your map to locate an emergency caller today. So that's it for today. I hope there's some questions in the chat box and you guys have been asking questions throughout. Thank you for your time and for your attention. and feel free to reach out and to contact me if you have any additional questions. Thanks so much.